first and foremost a composer. I write music. That's what I do. I get ideas very quickly, Ed. It comes to me very quickly. I can be walking the dog outside and music can be running through my head. You know, I don't mind it. I mean, it's just always something that's there in my mind, and it's always something that I'm thinking about. My advice for young writers is always say yes, never say no. When I first came to New York in 1962, right out of high school, and I was going to Manhattan School of Music, and I went to an ASCAP seminar, and we were talking to a lot of different people, and the guy said to me, you know, I need some arrangements for 2 pianos for a show I'm doing. Do you know how to arrange for 2 pianos? And I said, yes, of course I do. Had I arranged for 2 pianos before that? No. This is the advantage where studying music gives you, because I came from a classical background. So I went out and got 2 piano music. I went down to G. Sherman in Manhattan, bought some 2 piano, and I looked at it and I said, okay, I see what they do. I see how they put this together. I understand this. Now I know what to do. So I did his arrangements for 2 pianos. He loved it, you know, and that started my career.
And it is enough to fill our lives with love.
I did get work doing arrangements where someone maybe composed a song but doesn't know how to put that song in so that the instruments can play it. I was able to take what they wrote and make it into a piece that's arranging. And arranging is brings it to life, you know, it kind of gives it to life.
Who am I? Who am I?
You know, a song like Holly Holy, which is basically just E major constantly through the song, the strings provide a little bit of variation and a change of pace because it's not in the song. So you have to have it somewhere else in the background. So that's arranging.
Lee Holdridge is my conductor and arranger and a brilliant, brilliant musician. Lee.
Gives me a great deal of pleasure to introduce to you our arranger and conductor, a gentleman that I think is simply a genius, Mr. Lee Holdridge in the orchestra.
What are you hoping for? Do you know? And a beautiful sadness comes over me. There ain't no way to stand Kansas when you've been to Oz. Dorothy was a fool to leave. She could have stayed. She had it right in her hands. She had it made. She could have had it all for keeps, but was afraid.
Oh, love to some is like a cloud, to some as strong as steel. For some a way of living, for some a way to feel. And some say love is holding on, and some say letting go. And some say love is everything, some say they don't know.
Loving you makes life worth living. Didn't we almost have it all? The nights we held on till the morning. You know you'll never love that way again. Didn't we almost have it all? Didn't we almost have it all?
I spent 11 years in New York, and then I came out here as I started working for Neil Diamond and then stayed here.
Dear Father, we dream, we dream.
There's a sequence in the movie where the seagull flies off into the mountains, and it's a long orchestral piece. And at the end of the orchestral piece, I reprise the Dear Father melody. And at the moment that the character of the seagull dies, I had all the strings arrive at a perfect C major chord, but I had the French horn sustain the tritone, the F sharp, against it, as a way of saying, this is a transition, this is something different. And it was impeccably played, and it sounded gorgeous, it sounded magnificent, and everybody was blown away by it, except for Neil Diamond, who came out of the studio and said, there's a wrong note. And I said, no, Neil. I said, that's not a wrong note. That's 20th century music. That's the tritone. It's there for a reason. He didn't understand it. He wanted the G, which I thought it didn't make the point.
Music makes pictures and often tells stories, all of it magic, and all of it true.
I think it was in the early 70s. I met a man in New York by the name of Milton Oken. I knew who he was. He was kind of really a famous record producer. He had produced Peter, Paul, and Mary and a few other people. He was doing a solo album with Mary of Peter, Paul, and Mary. So he contacted me and wanted me to do the arrangements. So we worked on that together and we did the arrangements. And there was a song that John Denver had written called Circus that she wanted to record.
If I look like home to you, and if I am your sign, don't try to understand it, die when I draw the line. It hasn't come to this that you can say I waste my time looking everywhere, going nowhere.
And John came to the studio and played the guitar part, and that's how we met.
There is nothing here that I can learn what it's all about. You haven't said a thing to me, and you talk so very loud. Looking everywhere, going nowhere.
Not long after that, John and Milt were working on a new album of his. And John said, you know, I really would like some strings on some of the tracks. Both of them said, how about Lee? Let's get Lee in. So there I was. And then, so now they hired me to write strings.
Welcome to my morning. Welcome to my day. I'm the one responsible who made it just this way.
He loved the whole process of when I would bring in the string section of the orchestra. He loved that. He wanted to be there. He was listening to everything. And later on, he would say to me, oh, I hear a French horn here, or can you do something here with a French horn? I say, okay, absolutely. And, you know, he got involved in it. He really loved it. It was very exciting to him.
Welcome to my happiness. You know it makes me smile.
From that point on, John really got interested in the orchestra, wanted to tour with an orchestra. So we started enlarging all his arrangements and making them for the larger orchestra so that he could tour with them.
I think I'd rather be a cowboy. I think I'd rather ride the rain. I think I'd rather be a cowboy than to lay me down and love the lady's chain.
I was usually always involved in most of the arrangements for him. Now, in terms of an arrangement, normally I would be in the studio with him. We would cut like a small track with just a guitar, bass, piano, drums, that kind of thing. And then I would take the track home and I'd listen to it and I'd add stuff to it. And we'd come back into the studio and add all the other instruments. In terms of arrangement, we did it pretty quickly. It was always done very quickly.
Ladies and gentlemen, John Denver.
Good evening!
In that first batch was Annie's song.
You fill up my senses like a night in a forest.
He walked into the studio. He said, Lee, we've got this new song we're going to record. Would you like to hear it? I said, yeah, sure, I'd love to hear it.
Like a walk in the rain.
So he played Annie's song on his 12-string guitar, which, as you know, is a monster to play. And he played it perfectly with all the descending lines, all the fingering and everything. It was perfect.
You fill up my senses.
He was a really good guitarist. A lot of people don't know that about him. And he said, Lee, what do you think we should do with it? And I just pointed to the guitar and I said, that.
Let me give my life to you. Let me drown in your laughter.
Which is basically what we did. That track is his guitar, and then gradually the orchestra forms around it.
Beside you, let me always be with you. Come, let me love you. Come, love me again.
He just went crazy over the string arrangement of that. There were certain songs I said to him, John, these are going to be Americana. They're going to be part of Americana in the future. They'll become like part of the folk culture of America. You know, a song like Rocky Mountain High, Take Me Home, Country Roads, Annie's song, they're all American folk heritage now. And he was stunned that I told him that. I said, they will be, you'll see. I said, there's certain songs that are just going to be in the fabric there, you know, and they'll always be there.
Like a night in a forest,
like the mountains in springtime, like a walk in the rain, like a storm in the desert, like a sleepy blue ocean. You fill up my senses, come fill me again.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jane Oliver.
And you will stand on your own special ground. Then you will have found the right guns for me, where the right kind of raindrops will fall. And the hope in your heart's coming from knowing someday you will find me after all.
How I met Jane was somebody said, "Oh, you got to hear this girl sing. She's really good." So they arranged it for her to come by my house. She was going to sit down and play on the piano and sing for me. She came over to the house and she sang, I think it was La Leña.
Wish that your heart had lied.
And she just sat at the piano and sang it. I was blown away. I said, "You're fantastic." I kind of had this American Piaf kind of image of her, you know, because she had something about the way she sang. So I took her around to a lot of different record labels, but we couldn't get anything happening. But as you know, she started doing a lot of little clubs around New York, and eventually CBS discovered her.
As I spent my first night alone without you, you taught me how to live, to be myself and how to give. And now it's you who is giving up on giving.
I think she was brilliant. She did her first album and it got attention. People liked it. And CBS said, you know, we were all talking and I said, you need to match her up with a great record producer who could really kind of bring her home, is what I said. And they said, who do you have in mind? I said, well, I think my friend Tom Catalano would be ideal for her. You know, he had produced some Helen Reddy and different things. Of course, all the Neil Diamond stuff. So we did that album together. Tom Catalano, Jane, and myself, called Chasing Rainbows.
You are the one who makes me happy when everything else is gray. Yours is the voice that wakes me mornings and kicks me out to the day.
It made the top 10 pop list of that year, and it sold 500,000 albums. It was very successful. CBS was very excited and they wanted her to do another one right away with Tom. But you know, Tom was very specific with her. He taught her a lot about how to sing into the microphone and how to work things and how to make it work. If you listen to that album, it's impeccable the way that album is put together. But she resisted him a lot and she kept saying, no, I don't want to do it that way. He'd say, try it this way, try it. And I mean, they went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I was caught in the middle a lot. And when it was time to do the next album, she said, oh, he's too controlling. I said, Jane, do me a favor. I said, I have a feeling you should make another album with him. He'll probably bring you a hit. I said, he has the magic touch. Now that he's worked with you, I think he knows what to do. I said, make another album with him, and then you'll have a hit, and then you can go off and do whatever you want. She didn't want to do that. She fought it, and I said, you're making a mistake. He's like really good for you. You need this. It's like your college, you know. He's going to shape you. She wouldn't do it.
dans mon cœur quand j'étais dans tes bras. Love besides the one you find, and if it's meant to be, my love will guide you home, however dark the night. We go where there is love when we are lonely, and going back we find enough love stayed behind to make us feel we're home, make us feel we're home.
Molly Lakin was introduced to me by my agent. She was a very gifted young lyricist.
Just because it's over doesn't mean it didn't happen, doesn't mean it wasn't beautiful, even with the
Beautiful Sadness was the first song she and I wrote together, and that was for Jane Oliver.
and
Yeah.
a beautiful sadness comes over me.
I love that song too. I did a film called The Other Side of the Mountain Part 2, and she wrote the lyric for the theme in that. It's Time to Say I Love You. It's a beautiful song.
When you know love is right, you gather dream bouquets.
I'd already written that music, so I made a piano demo for her, gave her, in those days it was a cassette, and she took the cassette home, and then a couple of days later she came back with the lyric, and we sat down, I sat at the piano, we sang it through, and we said, that's great, that sounds great.
Clouds go by, just poems in the sky, on whispered days like these.
We played it for the producer, they loved it.
When summer smiles,
As you know, they recorded it and put it in the movie.
it's time to say I love you.
One of my friends made a comment about The Other Side of the Mountain. He said, Lee, you make that old truck look good with your music. Remember, he was driving around in an old beat-up truck. All this orchestration, with this romantic melody. He said, you make that truck look really good.
Just poems in the sky, on whispered days like these. When summer smiles on everything you do, it's time to say I love you.
There's a plate of homemade wishes on the kitchen windowsill, and date is enough to fill.
Moment by moment, the choices we make depend on the chances we take.
We did While I Remember You.
En tout le temps, je suis sous mes souvenirs sans mes vieux amis.
We wrote it for a TV movie. It was a story about a brother and sister that were separated by the war. and they both hear the song on the radio, and it makes them think of each other. I really love that song a lot.
Oui, les nuits pleines de grands patients, quelle chance, quel bonheur, quel rêve.
And Molly is French Canadian, so she wrote the lyric in French and English. She wrote the both lyrics.
Maintenant, je suis heureuse quand je pense à toi.
For a song like that, it's perfect. It's very magical in French.
Musique dans mon cœur quand j'étais dans tes bras.
Jane Oliver sang it. It got recorded a few times.
My memories are dear old friends.
My favorite recording of it is the one from the TV show. I've been trying to find it. I have not been able to locate it, but that's my favorite recording of it.
While I remember you.
An American Hymn, and that came about because that was my theme from the East of Eden miniseries, and everybody loved that piece. And Placido Domingo heard the piece, and he said, Lee, that's magnificent. I want to sing it. So we had lyrics written for it. Molly wrote those lyrics, and he recorded it.
A quiet road that wanders by, and I have smiled and wondered where it goes.
It's been done by instrumentally. The choirs have done it. Many soloists have done that song all over the place.
From the United States, Michelle Kwan.
She's skating to East of Eden, written by Lee Holdridge.
It's been used in many, many different ways. It's kind of like my classical piece that keeps coming back. I used to write with a pencil and a score on a desk, and I had the piano next to me, and I'd play and write, play and play and write. That's the way we did things. That was the long history of 500 years of music. But what we started to see was the beginning of the computer, and I think started to notice more in the 80s that they were talking about doing notation with computers. And the early programs were a nightmare, but I could sense that it was the future. I realized that I said, we're on to there's something here. This is very important. When you work on films, they make a lot of changes. So you have to rewrite your music a lot. And if you're doing it by hand, it's a pretty laborious process. Nowadays, you have a piece of music on your computer, and the director calls you, I took 4 seconds out of that sequence. Here's the new film. So you bring the new film into your computer, you see where they took the 4 seconds out, you edit the music, and you save it as a new file. And now you have a new score with that 4 seconds removed. And it's immediate. You can do it like within an hour. It was the answer, because towards the end of the 80s, I found myself having to rewrite things a lot. I said, there's got to be a better way to do this. So now what we have is we have these elaborate notation programs, which you have quite a bit of a learning curve. And I've modernized everything. We used to have big racks of pianos. We don't anymore. Everything's on menus. Everything's menus. It's in the computer. You can bring up a menu. You can bring up a string section. You can bring up a choir. You can bring up a harp. Whatever you want, and you put it into your mix. And you do it all from the computer, and it's pretty exciting. I mean, the notation programs I use do use AI, but we use it to like maybe if you have a score and you want to perform it, the AI will read it for you, and you read what you've written and what you've dynamics and perform it for you. That's where it's invaluable. Now, that being said, what I keep reminding my colleagues, I say, now, the computer doesn't do the composing. You still have to compose and tell it what you want it to play. You can tell when it's AI composed. I can tell when somebody plays me something and I say, oh, there's something wrong with that. And they say, well, it was AI. I said, you notice it right away. You notice it immediately. It's just not the same.
Take my hand now to remember.
I saw it on TV. I was stunned when I heard about that crash. It was a big shock, very big shock.
And the spirit fills the darkness.
I didn't know that he was off doing that. It was very surreal, very surreal.
It fills the endless yearning of the soul.
He came through LA a few times in the 90s. We met a couple of times. We talked about doing some more projects together. He was now spending more time up in Monterey, California.
It lives within each pond and is the whole. It's the fire and the wings that fly us home.
We kept saying, I didn't say it so much, but I know some of the gang said to him, John, you have all these wonderful aircraft. Why are you flying these untested experimental planes? Because he had a hangar, he had his own Learjet, he had a Cessna. He was kind of a daredevil. He was one of those people that would be dropped out of a plane and ski down the mountain in the Rockies. It's like, I thought that was sheer insanity, but he took a lot of flack from everybody. You can pay the price if you're a daredevil. It's kind of like maybe he shouldn't have been doing that. I don't know. It's easy to second guess, isn't it? The last time I saw him was Yellowstone. There was a song called Yellowstone about the wolves. That was the last thing I did with him. I did an arrangement for him of that. He was doing a concert in Texas. I couldn't go. I had a film that I was working on, so my friend Richard Kaufman conducted it. But it was a new arrangement that I had done of that song. And that was the last time both of us dealt with John. John was a very positive individual. He really liked people. He was very friendly. People ask me now about it, and I said, John had his demons, but he didn't bring them to the studio like a lot of other pop singers. Other pop singers would bring all their demons to the studio, and you'd have to deal with all of that craziness while you were working with. Not John. When John walked into the studio, he was there for the music. That's what he was there for. He wanted to make music and he wanted to sing. And all that other stuff was left at the door. We worked on a couple of film projects together. There was a film called Alaska that we did a big orchestra score for. There's some really good songs in that film. There's a song called Whalebones and Crosses.
Whalebones and crosses stand against the Arctic sky.
I remember Joe Henry had written that lyric, but they couldn't figure out what to do with it. Music. It was another one of those. He said, Lee, why don't you take a crack at it? So I came back in a couple of days and played them this whole elaborate piece of music, and he said, that's fantastic. I said, it's not a pop song, John, it's more of an art song. He was mesmerized by it. Another one, well, he told me, you gotta paint with this one. So I did, I went crazy.
Sailed on a dream on a crystal clear ocean, to ride on the crest of a wild raging storm.
He just meant just add a lot of colors to it, which I did, because all the different textures and brass, big brass build up and everything. And it was great because they did it in that kind of 6/8 rhythm, which gave you that sort of sway.
To understand, I calypso, the places you've been to, the things that you've shown us, the stories you tell. I calypso, I sing to your spirit, the men who have served you so long and so well.
That song is very important. The pedal point at the beginning, it has the pedal point under the gradual build of the vocal, and I had all the basses and cello and all on that A as he does the build, Very crucial. I heard a group do it a few years ago where they didn't do the pedal and it sounded terrible. And I emailed them and said, you got to put the pedal in. That song doesn't work without that pedal tone leading up to the vocal. Things like that. John and I were very aware of stuff like that, and it makes a difference.
Like the dolphin who guides you, you bring us beside you, to light up the darkness and show us the way.
It's part of the song. You can't take those things out of the song because that's part of the identity of the song. It might be a subconscious thing, but people notice it immediately if it's not there.
To be true as the tide, free as a wind swell, joyful and loving in letting it be. Like Calypso, the places you've been to, things that you've shown us, the stories you tell. Like Calypso, I sing to your spirit, the men who have served you so long and so well.
My memories of love will be all you.
John was very influenced by working with Domingo. He was so impressed. And he loved the way Domingo brought out certain lyrics in a song. John really noticed that.
And some say love is holding on, and some say letting go.
And some say love is everything, and some say they don't know.
And he said, but the way he emphasizes certain words, I said, well, that's what opera singers do. They nuance the words because when they sing in operas, they're telling a story.
Like a fire when it's cold outside, thunder when it rains.
And I think it influenced him. So John started doing more of that after that. You can hear him kind of start to really realizing that you bring out certain words, you bring out certain phrases. So John was always learning. He always wanted to learn new stuff. In terms of writing a new song, there was a song called To Gold and Beyond he wrote for the Olympics.
On a snow crystal morning, someplace close to heaven.
And it seemed static at one point. And I said, John, that song needs something. He had already written the song.
In a matter of moments, the dream of a lifetime is won. There's a fire in the heart, and it feels like...
And I added that extra thing where it goes up. And I played it for him on the piano. He said, that's great, let's do it, let's put it in. But I literally did that right there in the studio with him. You know, I just went over to the piano and said, it needs something like this. And I showed, I said, you need the rise here, it needs to rise. And we did it, it's in the song, you know. So he gave me a co-credit for that.
To be braver and stronger and truer, and then even more. To give all that you can be, and all that you've ever longed for. Give all that you can be, and all that you've ever longed for. We gather together to face one another. We gather in silence to sing for the sun. We gather in peace to go for the gold and beyond.
I'm doing a lot more concert works now, symphonic works. I went to Ecuador and did the premiere of a new violin concerto, and I'm still working on films, but there are not as many films. I have a film called Brothers After War. It's a documentary film. It's a fantastic film.
I'm doing this documentary right now because I want to see how the guys that I embedded with years ago are doing. How they're really doing.
My friend Jake Rademacher made a film called Brothers at War, where he followed it was a documentary. He followed his two brothers when they served in Afghanistan and Iraq.
I have two brothers serving in Iraq.
I think it's important for people in the military to have families because it makes a constant reminder to them of why they're doing what they're doing.
My brothers are putting their lives on the line. Why are they doing it? I need to know. So I set off for Iraq to find the answers.
And he went with them. He got permission to go with them and film them.
What I found was unlike anything I expected.
There's 3 guys with rifles!
My understanding grew of the tougher, uglier side of war that soldiers like my brothers know all too well.
He wanted to see what it was like for them in that world. And he met a lot of people. That was the first film called Brothers at War, which is also a magnificent film. But 15 years later, he decided to make the film Brothers After War about what has happened to everyone.
One of the hardest parts of being a warrior is coming home.
I was angry at everybody. They didn't understand what I understood.
Yeah, I was this close to taking my own life.
I invested so much of myself into the military that it was hard to let go.
I mean, it's a very positive film in a way, but it's very touching and it's very moving. You got to see it. You got to see it.
We are here. We are family. And we don't have to fight this fight alone. My main purpose is to get my guys home safe.
Being in the military, it's kind of an honor. Yeah, my country has problems, but it's still my country, you know, and I did a good job here.
People need more of a reminder of what Memorial Day weekend is for.
The amount of sacrifice I have asked my wife to make is kind of gut-wrenching, man.
There's not a lot of score, but where it's there, it's very important. It's very meaningful.
Coming home has always been the hardest part of being a warrior. But if we walk beside them, they can make it all the way home.
I'm moving on.
Years ago, ASCAP and BMI and those organizations and the Copyright Tribunal, they made deals about how much you would be paid for your music on television and on the radio. They worked out rates for these things and everything. So you knew that if you wrote 20 minutes of music for a television show and that television show played on CBS, you would get royalties for that. You'd get paid for that. Okay, all wonderful and great. Now comes the end of the 80s and into the 90s, we start to hear about the cable companies, okay? And the cable companies say, well, you know, we don't have the large audiences that CBS has. We have smaller audience, so you got to give us a smaller rate. So the copyright offices gave them all smaller rates. Same thing with the streaming companies. Netflix comes along and says, oh, we're just a small outfit. So gave them extremely low rates. So all of a sudden that becomes what everybody uses, but the rates are still locked in that old rate. So what happens if I write music for a show called Moonlighting, and it played on ABC and I got X number of dollars for it. Now it plays on Netflix. I get maybe 10% of what I used to get. And Netflix gets to say, oh, you know, well, that's because we're still a, new technology and this. And so the Library of Congress and the copyright, they're trying to change it, but nobody wants to change it, So we're stuck. It has altered the music business. It's causing a lot of problems and it's causing a lot of poverty. They keep trying to raise it, but it's very difficult, Ed. It's very difficult. And given the economics of the age we live in, it's just very hard to get raises anymore. Most of us composers, we've gotten used to taking a lot less royalties than we used to. It's just the facts of life. Now the industry's leaving California. As you know, it's going all over the world. So I may find myself moving to some other part of the world and and doing it all, because we do it all via the internet now anyway. So my wife and I talk about that all the time. We have a lot of ideas, maybe possibly the East Coast of the US or something like that. Take me back. My father was from Connecticut. My mother was from Puerto Rico. So I spent a lot of time on the East Coast. I went to I lived in New York. I lived in Boston. And so I still have that connection too as well. But we'll see. It's hard to know. Right now, it's a very volatile time. Everything's changing. So we'll see what happens. Oh, yeah, I don't even think about such. That word doesn't even cross my vocabulary. You know what I mean? I'm not going to stop doing what I do.